made the observation. His study was piss poorly done. You could poke holes through it. I mean, you could drive a truck through the holes, and yet people are promoting this medication and this combination of hydrochloroquine and azithromycin, not, really looking at all of the adverse effects and everything else. And so they're coming up with all kinds of medications to throw at it, whether it's that or HIV medications or medications for scabies, whereas they forget the basis of all this. Or talking about vaccines, they forget the basis of microbiology. Louis Pasteur, where he said, the problem is not the microbe, the problem is the host. So it doesn't matter the microbe if the host is strong and healthy and has done everything correctly to prevent it, then the microbe doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Can I add to that? I agree 100%, as always, Joe. But I think there's a whole nother level of this that really frightens me. And that is that we have a president and a bunch of enablers that really don't care about anything except getting reelected. So they'll say and do and promote falsehoods. And I wouldn't be surprised if somebody in that family has a vested interest in these drugs that they're promoting, okay? And I'm sure. And the other thing is, it's coming out now that the same Russian counter-information specialists who worked on the 2016 election are behind a lot of these messages. Like I watched a 1-hour YouTube video that everybody was all excited about on LinkedIn, where this supposed doctor from New York made a statement like, something's very wrong here. Everybody goes on the ventilators and they're all dying. That's something we've never seen before in medicine. This is like a wet behind the ears ER doc in New York. And immediately I wrote, what do you mean? I was on the front lines during the AIDS epidemic, and going on a ventilator was the last stage in a horrible death. Okay, and so when you look at it in that way, it's worse even than what you're saying, because it's part of what's heading towards us in terms of a disinformation campaign leading up to this election, because these people are desperate. They know that they've blown it.
Dr. Ostrow, that's part of the problem. The disinformation campaign is coming at every possible angle you can imagine. It's not just social media, but you have nurses and physicians that are part of disinformation as well. Like, people don't know who to trust. And now you've got Bill Gates pushing his agenda with vaccinations that seem to be in direct conflict with President Trump. But yet, then again, I don't trust either one of these guys advising me medically.
and that's the thing, that they're basing treatments and management on observations, on ideas, but yet something that's been studied for years, for decades in Israel, everyone else craps all over it and says, oh no, that's not real medicine. Marijuana is not for medicine. It's a gateway drug. When in reality, if you use your phytocannabinoids and stimulate it and reinforce your endocannabinoid system, you'd be able to build the defenses to fight off, whatever may be coming at you. Not saying that it's going to cure COVID-19, God forbid we say that, but if you build a strong immune system and your immune system is, doing well, and David can certainly speak to this far better than I, with his amazing work with HIV and AIDS patients, and using cannabis for those specific patients, years of this, but yet people still say, oh no, that's not medicine because there's no scientific research. But yet you take an observation and you're going to treat it and then cause prolongation of the QT segment, torsade du pointe, which leads to ventricular tachycardia, which leads to ventricular fibrillation, which leads to freaking death.
Yes, 100%, Joe. You and I should join a mutual, recommendation society. But I really think that it's an opportunity as well. I always look at these as educational opportunities. That's why I really enjoyed Susan's program, because it was like, what can we do now to capitalize on the fact that cannabis has now been declared an essential business and wellness thing, at least in California and my state.
Well, Florida as well, yeah.
How can we capitalize it, and how can we identify the people who are authentic, like you, who have experience treating patients? You have much more experience treating patients with cannabis than I have. My experience is, before yours. And I came into this at the beginning of the medical cannabis revolution as an offshoot of the AIDS activism movement. And I always point back to people about that.
Dr. I want to ask you about your work with HIV and AIDS and cannabis. Like, what has been the biggest thing that you've noticed about how and I'm somebody that I'm undetectable now, but I am HIV positive, and I've used cannabis. It's been an amazing thing for me to offset any, side effects that I've had from medication or the inflammation especially. But what has been the biggest takeaway that you've had from your work with cannabis and HIV patients?
God, at different levels. On the patient level, it was exactly that experience. Patients coming to me and saying, doc, this stuff that's, I don't know, can I talk about it in your office? They're always afraid I was a narc or something. That helps me much more, than the drugs I'm getting. At least it makes me feel better. At the time when there weren't any really effective drugs, and it was the side effects of the drugs that were just killing people. But then my colleagues who were very resistant, I couldn't believe how resistant, organized medicine was until I learned to follow the money. And I always say to people, because I'll give a talk to medical students and they say, you're telling us what the government has been telling us is wrong? And why would it be that they would keep from us this information? And then I say, okay, let's talk about the money. And that's, I think, my number one takeaway from this is whenever you see people selectively and misinterpreting data to claim that marijuana should be kept prohibited in Schedule I, you look into what their business is, and you will inevitably find that they are directly or indirectly supported by what I call the neo-prohibitionist lobby, okay? And I don't know, Joe, if you've seen this, but there's one group in particular that is actually based in San Diego and Stanford, where you are, but they're all over the country, and they'll pick up on anything published negative, and they will just, send it out on this huge, publicity machine they've created, and that's funded when Jeff Sessions was Attorney General. He and the guy in charge of this group came up because Jeff Sessions was totally against cannabis and thought anybody who used it should be thrown in jail. And they came up with a way to misdirect funds from the government fight against the opioid overdose epidemic to anti-cannabis propaganda, okay? And then there's a double standard in the medical journal area. Editors will get something from these people and will publish it sight unseen, not even question the methods, which are usually, so obviously skewing the interpretation, the results. But you put something in trying to move the field ahead, and the answer you get is the one that Joe was just talking about. Where are the double-blind studies? And just now, the DEA has finally, after 4 years of stalling, said they're going to review the applications from people to grow privately for research purposes. But if you look at their rulemaking, they say they are going to take possession of all of that, and they will dole it out to who they want to dole it out to. So it's not going to solve the problem of doing double-blind studies.
Dr. Rosado, what do you think? Is there a benefit towards, because you can't, all flower of cannabis plant is not created equal, and from my understanding, every every plant is basically going to have a different effect on somebody. And I don't know enough about the growing process. I'm not an expert there. But do you see a benefit towards, specific strains and then having that strain patented and used and prescribed specifically for that ailment? Or is cannabis, the whole plant of cannabis, is it just a one-size-fits-all therapy?
No. I'll start with the second question first. No, it's not a one-size-fits-all by no stretch of the imagination, because I'll give the same chemovar, and remember, plants do not have strains; they're species. Bacteria and viruses are the ones that create strains, which is the challenge that we're looking at with COVID-19, because people are saying, well, if I've had COVID-19, then I'm immune and I'm okay and I'm not going to get it again. Well, they've already discovered a new mutation of that virus. It's the same thing with, for example, HIV. Let's say you and your partner both are HIV positive, but you still have to use protection because your strain of HIV may be different than her strain or his strain of HIV. And then you can contaminate each other with each other's strains. So that's the example I use to emphasize that plants are not strains. You have the genus, the family, the species, subspecies. But regarding, the one size fits all, and it's very, very challenging because it's like wine. If you've had a drought or if you had excess rain, the wine is going to taste differently. It's going to smell differently. It's going to have different properties. The same thing's going to happen with, cannabis that's grown in Florida, where we have a lot of, pollen and mold, etc., and compare that to cannabis grown in Colorado or Northern California. So a Jack Herer in Florida is not going to be the same Jack Herer in Colorado and the Jack Herer in Northern California, which is why Dr. Raphael Mechoulam, Professor Mechoulam, is now talking about using the acid forms of the cannabinoids rather than the active form. So like the CBDAs and the THCA and the CBGA, using the acid form, synthesizing those in a lab and then producing them in mass, because he has discovered that the acid form is 1,000 times more, there's 1,000 times more affinity in the cannabinoid receptors by going with the acid form, and by having the acid form, it's more of an antioxidant and an anti-inflammatory.
So
I want to add to that the idea of individualized therapy, I think cannabis is going to prove that to be, the way to go. And I think it's at a good time to do it, because individualized therapy is happening in a lot of areas, like cancer therapy, where they take people's own immune cells and they sensitize them to their own cancer. Problem is, it's very expensive because it has to go through the FDA and the pharmaceutical process, and then there's a limited number of patients, and insurance companies will pay for it. So my hope is, and it has been all along, that we can maintain some of the community origins of cannabis and have come up with therapies that are not beyond people's reach. Because as you can see with COVID-19, this pandemic is only furthering the inequalities in our society. And the people who are dying are predominantly Black and Latinos and others who don't have access to the health care that's necessary to survive this epidemic. And so I'm hoping, as a public health person, that we will learn some things from the medical cannabis movement that can make medicine better in the United States and the world.
I would actually like to hear both of your opinions about this. What would you say? Because to me, keeping the integrity of the plant, like I hate to compare this to skincare, but like with skincare and this, the manufacturing process with skincare, if it's not bioavailable or naturally occurring in the body, it's not going to be as good for the skin, or the skin's not going to appreciate it as much. my feeling with cannabis is like the integrity of the plant and keeping it in its purest form is necessary to get the true healing properties out of it. But the pharmaceutical industry is wanting to go the synthetic route. And my concern with like the DEA and FBI and people like that getting involved is that there's going to be a push to go synthetic, to mass produce, but isn't the synthetic form what's actually going to cause most of the problems health-wise as far as the side effects and things like that?
Well, a pure synthetic THC, despite what anybody says at the DEA or FDA, is identical in structure and properties to purified THC derived from the plant, okay?
So organic and synthetic, it's the same thing?
As long as you remove those solvents and chemicals and you have just the pure thing, Joe, tell me if you don't agree with me, it's the same thing. And that's another one of the lies, that somehow if you synthesize it, it's not harmful and is not in Schedule 1, but if it comes from the plant, it is harmful. So that's kind of like, myth number one that we have to attack. The other thing is, I don't think it matters, Joe, you tell me, whether you find the right chemovar for that particular disease or patient group, or an extract and use the whole extract, or you prepare extracts from different plants and then you mix them to the right proportions of the different cannabinoids and terpenoids. I think both routes are important. It's just the idea that a drug is a single molecule that locks like a key going into a lock at one receptor and that's it. To understand it, that is also not applicable to HIV, because we know it takes what we call the entourage effect. Joe's been talking about oxidation and so forth, and you've been talking about the immune system. The real problem is not just turning on the immune system, but balancing the effects and the immune function. Because, like, for example, in COVID, the really fatal flaw is when you get a cytokine storm and your immune system kills your lungs, basically. It goes after your lungs. Wow. So it's not just turning it on, it's turning it on in a controlled and a balanced way. And it's the same thing about oxidation. I'm a big fan these days of Bob Melanie's hypotheses of how cannabinoids work. And if you look into, energy metabolism and regulation, you can really see how different cannabinoid formulas could actually cure a variety of defects in energy production and regulation in cells, all the way on up to cancer. It's probably going to be the key to cancer therapy.
Wow. So this is, I want both of you to answer this question. I'm going to give you a check for $5 billion, but you can only use it to something cannabis related. And no, that's not a personal inventory that you get to buy with the $5 billion. But if I give you $5 billion right now that you could use for the cannabis industry, anything you want, what would you do?
I would use it for education. I would go to the universities, all of the medical schools, because right now less than 10% of the medical schools in the United States teach about the endocannabinoid system.
Wow.
So I would utilize that money, because their biggest gripe is, oh, well, there's no money to fund this. So I would use that money to have a team of physicians to go to these universities and teach our future generations of physicians on the endocannabinoid system and the fact that this is medicine and that it is not a gateway drug, but it is an exit drug. It's an
and I would use the other half. I would use the other half of the money for community-based research. I would go to all the medical cannabis practitioners and those who want to be, make sure that they got trained in the best practices, and set them up with a data entry system, so standardized data, observational data on every patient that goes on medical cannabis, along with the ratings of their symptoms and their quality of life and functionality. And that data is what's going to allow us to come up with at least preliminary treatment guidelines. It's going to give a lot more information for you to include in your educational programs. Because let's face it, we're at the beginning of a scientific explosion of knowledge and practice. That is just at the start, and the government and the prohibitionists have tried everything possible to keep us from getting there with really good science, because it would totally demolish all their arguments for prohibition, that basically this is a dangerous narcotic with no known therapeutic uses. So I think a combination of education on the one hand and community-based research that encourages doctors to get involved and gives them something else besides just their practice to contribute to this field would be the two things I'd like to see happen.
So from my understanding, every time I've gone to research something cannabis related, I've gone to look at the studies that have happened in Israel. Is Israel the leading country in cannabis research, or am I assuming that?
They're the leading country in basic cannabis research, okay? Because the basic discoveries, the whole endocannabinoid system was more or less mapped out. And God bless him, Raphael Mechoulam comes up with new categories of compounds, either in the plant or in the body, that we can't keep up with. As to what, the problem is translating that into clinical studies. That's where there's not enough, places and resources. And it's unfortunate that two things happen at once. That the cannabis capital market collapsed, as we all know, before COVID. And now with COVID, who knows where there'll be money for new startups and smaller operations. And will this just accelerate the consolidation into large and monopolistic groups? And once that happens, then you're talking about big cannabis, like you're talking about big pharma or big tobacco. It's not in their interest to promote, individualized use of the plants and its extracts.
No, exactly. And so so that's where David and I would be spending our money in education and research, which are the two things that are greatly needed, in general. The research is more to show it to the naysayers. The education is to change the way people are thinking about the whole medical cannabis movement.
And both of them, kind of flow together when it comes to changing drug policy, because you need to have the medical and other healthcare professions pushing for it, and you need to have the research for the naysayers who say, well, where are your double-blind studies? So I think that two-pronged approach is what we have to do. It's what our opponents are doing, okay? They're funding these cockamamie studies that come up with, say, oh, well, if you reanalyze the data from Colorado, you see that actually after they put in recreational, all these things went up. They didn't go down. Well, they took a few outlying data points from the very first month of the program and ignored everything else. And so we have to, the only way to fight them is by doing really good work in education and research and making sure that gets out. Because, we can't hold on to it. We can't be, the gatekeepers here. We have to get the 70 years of disinformation and brainwashing has really left the medical field in a very difficult position. Most people, like when I developed pain in my lower back and I went to my doctor, he said two things. He said, one, you've got thoracic outlet syndrome, but don't look to me for an opioid prescription. And I said, Andy, I'm not looking for an opioid prescription. I have a friend who's making me brownies, and a quarter of a brownie gives me 6 hours. And he says, well, don't look for me for a medical cannabis recommendation. I think it's a scam to get free highs by stoners. Fortunately, he sent me to an orthopedic orthopedic rehabilitation man who first thing he said after I told him what I was doing, he said, "Wonderful, I have 100 patients like you, and here's the name and the office of the doctor who writes the recommendations for all of them, and welcome to the new world."
I've had 2 back surgeries. The first back surgery, S1L5, I was so terrified, having worked with a lot of, ALS patients and a lot of pain management patients. Having worked with them, I was so paranoid about Oxycontin and all of those other drugs that they prescribed so easily back then that I used brownies as well. I navigated back surgery with just brownies and was fine. The second time, I couldn't get access to cannabis, and I was taking the smallest dosage prescribed of Oxycontin. I was so dope sick constantly. Like, the way it affected me was brutal. I really, but what I'm curious about, why is cannabis, the cannabis plant, not addictive the same way an opiate is? Because they are both in a way.
Addiction depends on 2 things: the reward system that gives you that dopamine rush, and you get addicted to that feeling. But also in the process, there's actually structural changes in the brain that rewires the synapses to be more supportive of that dependence on the drug. Cannabis interrupts pain by interrupting the coordination of the signals through different parts of the brain. The pain is still there, still going to the brain, but it doesn't get processed in a way that you experience it. And in the process of doing that, it does not make the structural changes, and it may even undo some of those structural changes. So studies are being done on how cannabis, after a person has gotten off opioids, can be used to reduce the cravings, which we all know is a main motivation of relapse. So if you understand the mechanism by which cannabis is working, the answer is pretty clear. But again, when I try to publish that information based on already done research by others, the answer is, but where are your double-blind studies? Where are your double-blind studies? And my answer is, fuck you. I mean, why are you asking for something that cannot be done?
I call a good sativa. I was a coke addict, and coke, meth, like anything to keep me going. I did for years, abused my body, and when I quit doing that, I found that using a sativa became I would call my vape pen the anti-cocaine stick.
Well, you should try John Belushi's strain, because he calls it the marriage counselor, and he says a couple of tokes on that, and it was available. His brother might not have overdosed on speedball.
I'm a believer, because the fact is this: even though I'm clean now, I love cocaine. I love good cocaine, and the problem was, just like a donut, I couldn't just have one. I had to have 12 or more. And my brain's never stopped going, I love that feeling of being high from the cocaine, but a sativa completely helped me crush a coke habit.
I'm with you, and I want to see the day when we can do substitution studies for stimulants using the right cannabinoid mixtures, because I think people like you and my own experience tells me that there's something there.
Yeah, because sex, so just being transparent here, I mean, this is nothing I don't talk about publicly anyway, but drugs and sex were my thing. Like, it was my escape from the age of 16 on. So that's what I did. I couldn't have sex without wanting cocaine or meth, and I couldn't do cocaine or meth without wanting to have sex with everything that walked. But I swear to you, I get the same enjoyable feeling that I was chasing with meth or cocaine with a good sativa, without all the weird stuff like humping couches and all of that.
And remember, the first endocannabinoid that was discovered and named in 1992 is anandamide. and it comes from the Sanskrit word ananda, which means bliss.
Hello.
Hello.
How you doing? It's funny
meeting all my heroes.
Doing the thanks, Casper. These videos remind me that I haven't seen a barber in 2 months, right? Because I've been inside. It's my 40th day inside.
'40th day.
Yeah.
What's yours, Dactor? 120?
Sorry, what's that?
Dactor's been on a 24-hour curfew since December 24th.
Who's been December 24th?
Dactor, the other man on the screen there.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't see anybody but you.
Is that right? Oh.
Yeah. Oh, now I see someone. But I went to I've used Zoom a couple of times, so I'm able to see him now. Hey, how you doing, man?
Yeah. We're all good. We've been awake all night. It's just coming up to 7 o'clock in the morning here.
Wow.
All right. I'm sorry about that, Mark. I had to switch devices. How you doing?
I'm good, man.
Good. Man, it's been crazy. Happy 420.
Happy 420. It's actually 420 in Newfoundland right now. They're like on
Is
the
it?
half hours. Yeah. They get their own unique time zone.
Look, that's where we're at. We're on like 18 right now. We've hit every single one. We've stopped at every stop. We had Tony in here earlier with Fareed. We had about 5 different continents all smoking on the same time. It was magical, man. Honestly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I've got my bong ready.
Yes.
I'll have to prop up the phone somehow. And let's see how we're gonna do that there.
That's awesome, man. And we appreciate you taking the time out today. Like I said, we were spoiled rotten earlier because we had binge rockers drop by too. I was like, if we get to kick it with binge rockers and smoke with Marc Emery in the same day, like I'll lose my shit, you know? Like that's cool, man. Flat out, everything that you kind of paved the way, and I'm sure you get this all the time, but that doesn't mean it came from me. So everything you've done to pave the way. We watched several videos on you tonight. Like you keep coming up in conversation because you should. You know, there's the right way to do things and the wrong way. This whole totality of this event has been nothing but like old school influencers. I mean, but the top of the top niche. We've really been spoiled rotten tonight and today, and it's just gonna get better and better. And so we appreciate you stopping by for sure. I know Casper, a lot to Casper. Like just period, man, for sure. So just thank you for your presence.
Well, already today's the most fun I've had in that 40 days, more or less. I mean, you know, it's funny because the only reason to live in a city, I live in downtown Toronto, the only reason to live here is because of all the amenities that come with city living, sports events, concerts, restaurants. I mean, it's a ghost town out there, and you'd be far better off in the countryside. It would cost you less, right? So in this kind of environment, it's pointless being in the city because they're just big concrete towers, everybody hiding inside. I don't know what they're doing, but you know, I mean, the reason you're in the city is because of the city life, and that's completely frozen right now. It's so strange, and I think unnecessary, but
I was up in New York for a investor conference like a week before they started evacuating or like not letting people in, you know, and it was so nice. I was staying on Broadway for like $50 a night at 4 stars. It was just beautiful. And then they shut down Broadway, and I was like, I should probably go home now, you know. And so,
well, yeah. It's. By the way, this T-shirt I'm wearing. Let me just lower the camera there for a sec. Oh, hang on a sec. No. Whoa. Okay, hold on a sec. There we go. It's going to tilt it this way. So you can see this T-shirt I'm wearing, which is from Serbia. And it's my friend Natasha gave it to me back in 2018. And she's currently in prison now for growing plants in Belgrade. So it's kind of a bit of a shout out to her. And all the people still in jail, still going to jail, still threatened with jail, who are keeping it real around the world, right? And we've got a lot of legal jurisdictions, and that can be fun, and that's made some people money. But most of the world is still kind of like this, really. And a lot of the medicalizations and the legalizations are kind of scammy, right? It's really just a corporate takeover in a lot of ways, or a corporate government takeover. And in Canada, the retail chains, 9 out of 10 of each province of the provinces, the government is the monopoly wholesale distributor, right? And then in 5 out of 10 provinces, the government is the actual monopoly retailer.
Bless you.
Now the studio audience here is in really big trouble. But I told them to keep quiet. Like we're unsocial distancing, but we trust each other's germs. Basically, is what it gets down to. And if you don't trust other people's germs, how are you going to cope in this society, right? Because next year there'll be another virus every 6 months. Actually, we're probably doing ourselves a disservice by washing our hands so much, because one of the ways we get immunity is by playing in the dirt.
Yeah.
When you're a kid, right? Playing in the dirt. Now, people don't do that anymore. They're inside with video games and various things, and parents are afraid of having their kids outside. That's probably doing a big disservice to our immune systems.
We've probably never been as susceptible now to disease than we are now.
Now, I like the fact that service providers are going to be very cognizant about washing their hands and clean environments. That's all good. That'll be the one good thing to come out of this. But the idea that we have to fear other human beings is probably a really bad idea.
Yeah. So what have you been doing to keep yourself healthy and happy? I know you've been in the concrete jungle there for 40 days. So what have you been doing to keep yourself just...
Well, and the problem with going for a walk in Toronto is everything's closed. The parks are closed. Every amenity is closed. There's nowhere to go, actually, because you can't really hike in the countryside in downtown Toronto. And I don't have a car, but also it's kind of miserable weather here. It's March and April, and that's rainy and gray. It's lovely today. It's a beautiful blue sky out there, sunny day. It's really quite nice. Unusual. It's still cold though. It's only like 44 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's awesome. So we were talking earlier. We got into some pretty deep points with a bunch of people yesterday, or today. But one of the things we were talking about was the sense of community, going back to being small, right? Like I think we're working in too large numbers now. And Tony Budden, if you know Tony from, he lives in South Africa, Hemporium.
I love South Africa, nicest place in the world to visit, I'll tell you. I had 40 different kinds of cannabis when I went there for 2.5 weeks, in 2018. Beautiful time. What a gorgeous country.
Oh, shit. Daka, do you want to play that video for him? Are you there?
Yep, I can do that.
You got to see this video, Mark. It'll blow your socks off. You're going to love it.
All right. Where am I going to see that? Let's just over here.
Is it playing?
You just keep talking. I'll find it here. I got it here.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Got to bring it up. I've just got out of bed, so we've had a little snooze, and here we are.
That's a nap. What time is it? We're not missing a 20, right? We got a good minute? Okay, we got 22 minutes. I'm setting an alarm.
Yep.
That's how bad.
Coming up at 7 a.m. in New Zealand.
I've been smoking my ass off all day, too, so I'm just like numb to the world right now.
Well, in New Zealand, it's already 4:21, isn't it?
Twice.
Yes.
Yeah.
They got the very first one of the day. We brought it in. We had our best one. I think it was just outside of Russia, and we had like 12 people on the call from like 5 different continents. It was great. So you up there alone in the concrete jungle or what?
Yep.
Just give him a bomb.
But here's the thing. I've been thinking about that lately. If everybody else is quarantined, it seems like to me it'd be pretty safe to go and visit your friends who have been fairly diligent about staying indoors, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I was thinking of broadening my social contacts to at least include people who have been quarantining, because now I'm asking myself, especially in Ontario, I've been here 40 days. So who's still getting it? right? Who's still contacting COVID-19? And
Why is
I'm
the
thinking,
curve not bending, right? Why is the curve
well,
not
no. But here's the thing: I don't know a lot of normal people who've got it. Like nobody in my building seems to have it. And rule of thumb is if in a given flu season, people in your building would probably have a cold or a flu at some time. So it must be the elderly, a preponderance of the elderly, and healthcare workers, or somebody, because who was out getting exposed 6 days ago, 7 days ago, and now symptoms are showing? Who were those people, right? Because most everybody I know is like me, indoors. So I'd be curious to know who's getting it. I think there's a certain vulnerable population that needs to be very aware of this virus and avoid it. And that probably the vast majority of people, an enormous majority of people, especially under 45, have no reason to fear this virus particularly, not in contrast to the economic cataclysm we're going to have for the next 2 or 3 years.
I mean, statistically, the flu is much, much worse, statistically.
I'm not sure that's going to pan out.
Well, in terms of infection rate being higher.
Listen, guys.
Go ahead. Oh, you got it?
If we're going to be talking nonsense about the COVID, then let's move on.
Yeah,
okay.
You're right.
This is
please.
a serious thing all around the world, and perhaps we shouldn't be doing this, but we are. So here we go. Marc, I got to tell you, Marc, this is a pleasure to be on the same platform for you right now with you, because a large number of years ago, in fact, on May the 22nd, 2010, we did this. This is for you.
Oh, this is cool.
Showing the way. We're here today on behalf of Marc Emery, who's a political prisoner in the United States for the so-called crime of providing people with cannabis seeds. And we're in front of the American consulate because America is running the drug war. President Obama used to like a toke, and now he's keeping the same old shit going.
Wow, that's so nice.
Free Marc Emery.
Wow, that is so beautiful. That's like from September 2005, I think. Yeah, that's a beautiful video, and I'd love to have a link to that sometime. I put that out there because that's a really beautiful little video. Well, that's great. That's wonderful.
Freaking A, man.
You had that, man. Like, there's been a couple of really good points today, but with just the sheer size of this event and how it's came together and everybody like putting their time in, whether they got here last minute or at the beginning, moments like these, we've been getting them all night, but this one was like, I knew it was going to hit. I knew it was going to be powerful because it's just the temperature of this whole thing we put together, man. It's just wonderful. And we appreciate you so much for what you do, honestly. Like, I couldn't get any more over the top with that. Yeah.
Well, where does everybody see the business going in the next 6 months? I mean, how will everything in the world seems to have changed. And I'm thinking, how will cannabis be in the marketplace? Is the price going to go up, down? I think a lot of people are going to need to grow cannabis to deal with the consequences, economic consequences. So are we going to see a real explosion in home growing and guerrilla growing, legal growing possibly, or will we not? In Canada, the legal industry's had a lot of setbacks because the legislation is terrible. and it's hurt everybody, including the people, the corporate, raiders, I call them, or the disreputable ones. Even they're suffering, as well as there's so much pot on the market in Canada, because what happened was when they legalized cannabis, the free market had already met the demand, right? Whatever people want, people get in the marketplace. And Canada's an enormous producer of cannabis. So for everybody who wanted cannabis, we could provide it for them at a good price. So when the legal entities came by with their factory farms, football field size things, and adding huge amounts of cannabis to the overall supply, it caused a glut in both the free market and the legal market. And so the sales have been sluggish in the legal market here in Canada, and the prices come way down in the free market, like tremendously so.
They didn't really handle it too well up there. It looked like they almost handled it like a California style rollout. So where are you positioned now as far as the industry versus where you think it's going to go? I mean, I'm a brand strategist, so I have my own opinion, but I'd like to hear yours as far as it goes.
Well, the biggest problem is that it's hard. Everybody's being either regulated to death or taxed to death, or a combination of both usually. And a lot of countries like Colombia has started out with a lot of promise. Everybody invests, and then the government stalls for 2 or 3 or 4 years, and everybody has cash flow problems, either collapse or sell to some giant, American or Canadian or European concern. So what I notice is almost no normal people are in the industry kind of anywhere in the world. That basically the old school growers, the activists, the people who have just ordinary incomes but know how to do things, run a shop or run a business, they're excluded from the legal environment in a tremendous number of jurisdictions. And it usually gets handed over to these licensed, easily manipulated firms that have police on the boards of directors and politicians and are insinuated with the government, and they often get monopolies. I'm always amazed how governments are so anxious to give it all to one entity for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened in Canada. We have the worst of it. The only good thing that came of it all is that generally you can smoke cannabis out on the street pretty easily. In the old days, the cops would hesitate to really bother with you. But an example of this is when I used to come out of the stadium watching the Toronto Blue Jays, and I'd smoke, but I'd look around to make sure there were no cops, that I could see. They're directing traffic in a very busy environment. They're not likely to notice me, but rather than confront them. Well, now when I left the stadium in the last year and a half, I can smoke anywhere, and the cop's right beside me, and he doesn't even look. So that's the one good change. Is it's still illegal to be smoking free market cannabis on the street. You theoretically, if a police officer wanted to know where you got your cannabis, you're supposed to provide the receipt that you bought it at a legal government authorized shop.
Is that a law there?
Yeah, that's actually a law. But the thing is you're allowed to grow 4 plants. So what if you grew it yourself? And there's a ton of people with medical licenses where you can grow a huge quantity, right? So the law has so many inherently stupid, contradictory, unworkable things, but
I find it to be a really tough market right now. There's so many gaps that you can't identify as an economist, right? Like, what's buyer behavior going to do? How are they going to go back? Like, when they let off the floodgates, are they going to go back?
Well, another thing, nobody wants to get high through beverages. Whoever thought beverages were going to be something is totally like out to lunch there. The only thing that's going to happen in the future is we'll all get CBD in something we consume daily, like milk, yogurt, bread. It'll just say with CBD added. It won't even tell you what it's for because you get into trouble for that. But when CBD becomes popularized so much, and we're approaching that saturation now, then somebody's just going to buy it in bulk wherever they can get it in bulk once these systems start operating like they should without all this over-regulation and prohibition still. But once the CBD is made in huge quantities, it's just going to be put in our morning cereal, either the milk or the cereal itself will have with CBD added. And why that will be good is because people will have a positive physical feeling every time they consume that food or that kind of like yogurt or some kind of thing, and they'll associate that with the brand. So eventually, a lot of brands are going to have with CBD added. People will pick it up and say, I don't know why, but I feel better when I have this product, right? Because the CBD will make you feel positively.
It's happening in the skincare and cosmetic industry also. It's working with creating the product lines. All you have to do is put CBD in it doesn't matter the quality or anything. You can jack up the price 65%. It's the skincare industry is a scam anyway.
Well,
but
that's what I was
when you
going
add
to say.
CBD in it, it's like a growth factor.
But unfortunately, a lot of those products that advertise CBD often have trace negligible amounts of CBD, as well as
super low quality,
questionable efficacy of a skin cream with CBD. So I would say that's kind of
not even.
Well, you know, it's funny. I have good marijuana creams, right? They're infused creams with resin or something, so that when you apply them topically, they're amazing. And I believe in that. And capsules, everything, suppositories. I'm on board with all parts of the spectrum, including the ones I'm still learning about, CBG and CBN.
Yeah, CBG is it's awesome. But yeah,
you mean I meet the occasional cannabis nerd like you, who says that, and I'm thinking, I have no idea what is CBG. Okay, so tell me about CBG. I hear it a lot, but it doesn't sink into my brain.
Well, CBG is the stem cell, and I reserve the right to say that they'll come out with something else next month, right? That'll be the new thing. Like halfway through last year, isolate was the shit, and now isolate.
I don't know. I think CBG is more important than that, because I've got a friend
it's a stem cell. Everything can be made from CBG. So you have CBG that starts off at an early plant. You can only harvest it early or late. You can't harvest it at main peak hours or main peak harvesting time, because if you do, you basically you won't get the CBG concentrate you're looking for. So you have a further mature or a further immature stage that you want to harvest at. But that means you blow your whole crop. That's probably so expensive to make, right? But everything's made from it, so they can duplicate different cannabinoids based on CBG. I personally think CBG is going to be CBN, or they're going to be the equal to, and CBD is going to go to, like you said, a supplement or additive as far as everything goes.
Yeah,
that's what you're given. And so positioning yourself there, I even think positioning yourself in the industry, I've gotten completely off product. I mean, I'm sitting in my boutique right now, but this is like, I've completely pivoted, because being on product, I think, is the stupidest thing you can do with CBD right now. I think the knowing where to get in positioning when you get right to the right spot is going to be great. But the FDA, everything's so up in the air. Like they were helping us by not approving anything. Now they're hurting us on purpose by not approving anything, because if they would have flipped 3 months ago, we would have hit a wave. But now they just let it run, so people lose interest. It's a natural disinterest going on in the general public right now, which makes it easy to market to them, because nobody knows how to market, right? But it makes it, the stigma doesn't go anywhere. And as long as the stigma's still there, there's still problems, you know?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's so much stigma, but there's so much confusion as to its potential benefits, and not a lot of solid science. So, you know, a lot of it's anecdotal. I always love that term. So much about our culture is anecdotal.
I don't know why people say that like a bad word, you know? Like if I notice my body changes for the better over 30 days, and that's anecdotal because I don't have any, you know, specifics behind it, my body still feels better after 30 days, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, good thing about CBD is I've never heard it say it harmed anyone. That's unusual. Almost every substance on earth has the potential to harm some small fraction of the population. And I've never heard that with CBD. So.
Anybody got a lighter? I'm missing my. Oh, you can't pass me a lighter. Shit. Oh, what time is it?
It's 2:13 our time.
All right. What? Anybody know what CBD is coming up in?
Can I help you?
I got you.
Lean forward, bro. Lean forward. Here we go.
That's funny.
Get that.
That's awesome.
So what cities are coming up?
While we're at it, you know, here in New Zealand, we're still illegal. And the only CBD that we've got is the Central Business District. And it's empty right now.
Well, what's the referendum, in your opinion, going to be like?
Well, with this lockdown, we're really concerned that there's been no time given to cannabis debate. It's all about the virus.
Well, your lockdown is going to end shortly, isn't it? You don't have any real cases.
We declared that yesterday. We're finishing this in a week, but we go to level 3 for 2 weeks. And level 3 is not much different to level 4, which is complete lockdown. So it's a slowly coming out of it. But you know, in New Zealand, we're quite confident that we're going to kill this virus, that we're going to be virus free. And as long as we keep our moat around our country secure,
yeah, there you go.
We could be the first country in the world free of this damn virus. That makes us feel good. So we're putting up with the pain at the moment. We're putting up with the inconvenience and all the nonsense that's going on. So, you know, we just have to hold the fort.
By the way, do you consider the price of cannabis in New Zealand expensive? What is it for, say, a gram or an ounce of good cannabis in New Zealand right now?
It's black market price at the still market's $20 a gram.
Like $20 New Zealand? In
New Zealand, $20 a gram is the black market price.
Okay, that's pricey.
You get a gram rolled into a piece of tin foil. In New Zealand, the nickname is a tinny.
Wow, that sounds awesome. That sounds so old school.
Oh, you did that with crack.
Yeah. Well, it is old school.
Cannabis.
Well, you know, when I was publisher of Cannabis Culture, I sent reporters over to you way back in the old days, but not like about 5 years before the rally ad for me there. Back, Reverend DeMuzi would come and be with the legalized cannabis party in the South Island, Blair Anderson and all the people there, and went and spent time with Normal up in Auckland, and was at a demonstration in Wellington, and good times. I remember when Nandos Tanksos, wasn't it, the Rasta fella for the Greens? Yeah, and he was so mad at us because I bought some ads in the Wellington paper and an Auckland paper promoting the legalized cannabis party. And he said, Mark, if we lose by a fraction because you got them votes, you stupid idiot, he said, I'll be so upset. Fortunately, they got the 5% and they got the fellows on the list in. And I didn't cause him to lose representation because of those ads. But I remember I was very immersed in New Zealand politics back in those days. But it's sure taken a long time, hasn't it? 20 years later.
Absolutely.
20 years later,
only just recently that our medical regulations came into being on the 1st of April, just a few days ago.
Oh,
our
really?
medical regulations came into being, and right in the middle of this lockdown, nobody's got any medicine. Nobody's got anything for sale. So,
wow. How is that supposed to be provided? Like, in other words, who is going to provide it if things were normal?
Doctor prescription.
Oh, it's a prescription thing.
Green
Said, okay.
Just prepared concoctions.
Have they put out their guidelines yet on the on writing prescription?
What's that?
Have they provided guidelines yet for doctors writing prescriptions?
No one's been talking about. No one's talked cannabis at all. The 1st of April, when this came in, no one talked about it. Our media talks about nothing else about lockdown, COVID, the whole 9 yards. We're just sitting here. Here I am. I'm locked in the Cannabis Club, Wellington. I opened a Cannabis Club here, and a month after I opened, I got arrested. And here I am in 24-hour curfew. So I've been in curfew in Wellington since the 20th of December. So when the country went into lockdown, I thought, why isn't somebody asking me for advice about how to be in lockdown? I've been doing it for months.
Okay, well, you've been inside for about 4 months now, almost on the button, 4 months exactly. First of all, what are you looking at down the road? Have you been sentenced, or are you awaiting?
No. We haven't even got a trial date yet. A trial date's at least 2 years away. I'm 70 years old a few days ago.
So you're saying to me that you are not trustworthy to give bail at your age. Is that what they're saying?
Well, I am a recidivist offender.
Oh, no, I hear you. I hear you. And I would probably be those guys like in Jaws on the fishing boat comparing scars. Because I tell you, I've been in 39 different prisons and jails for cannabis, right?
Guys, we got 2 minutes. We got 2 minutes. And
what?
2 minutes to 4:20 somewhere.
Okay.
Where are we at this one? I've been away for a few hours. Where are we? Where are we going?
As well.
Well, I don't think there's anybody where it's
we're
420
Jamaica,
right
aren't we?
now.
I think there is. We just passed one that was a gap, so.
I don't think so. I think 420 is out like in the Atlantic.
Buenos Aires.
Oh, is that right?
Caribbean, maybe?
Rio de Janeiro.
Hamilton, Bermuda.
And it's Chile too.
You said
Hamilton, Bermuda.
Yeah, you're right. It's Buenos Aires, Chile probably as well.
San Juan, Puerto Rico.
That'll do.
Puerto Rico, nice.
Because of my bail conditions, I'm not allowed to possess or consume cannabis, Mark, so I'm not going to be seen openly with you.
Oh, my goodness.
Or I will be arrested.
I'm going to get you a little disclaimer there. Just put it right on the screen for you.
But
420 in Brazil.
Okay. Happy 420 Brazil.
Happy 420 Brazil. Feliz.
5.
Yes.
3.
Good to see you, Mark. I'm just getting caught up here. Had to take my nap. I was night shift.
420.
Hey, Feliz 420.
Hey.
This is a good little slot of cities and towns we're getting in right there. Oh yeah.
All right, I'm gonna get the bong. You know the big problem for me. I haven't been able to find alcohol.
I think your mic went off.
Smoked his audio.
Can you hear us, Mark? Yeah?
You're muffled. I think your mic is muffled.
Yeah. Someone from the studio audience came over and had to hold my camera while I do that. So
is hold my camera code?
That's right.
So where are you positioned at right now? Like, I don't know, you've been out for Cannabis Culture Magazine for a while now. I know you're out there, so I'm assuming you have some vested interest somewhere, but I know you seem like I was always planning. And so I can
the last thing I did was a brief weed delivery business, but my model was wrong, so that didn't work out. And then I had a weed store in town here in Toronto, a really great one, incredibly successful. But ultimately, the police with guns came to me and put that out of business. And that's where the 39 prisons and jails comes in, because I've never done anything legal for a good 30 years. So for me, it's very difficult to transition, right? I sold seeds. They were illegal. Bongs and pipes were illegal for 15 years. Weed was illegal when I sold it. I'm not permitted legally to ever be able to sell legal pot. They wouldn't give me a license for a store. They wouldn't give me a license for a grow. I couldn't be a head grower. I couldn't be almost anything in any of these legal companies. So a person like me is really in a bind. So
well, I don't think so. Do you mind if I as a brand strategist, honestly, I feel like your persona is where your value is. I would be selling your information right now. You know what I mean?
Show me the money. Show me the money. Show me the money.
I mean, it's that easy though. I mean, that's what
it's not that easy. I often tell people, listen, if it's easy to get that money, prep it all for me and I'll share it with you.
Okay.
Right. I'll be the talent. I'll do whatever podcast round the clock. It doesn't matter. I have lots of time. I can do a lot of work, but I need someone to say, okay, here's like $500 a week or $5,000 or whatever it is they're offering for this kind of project. And people come to me with ideas all the time. And I say, great, just pay me and I'll make sure your sales double in the space of 3 months or something, because I could easily do that. Right. Especially if you grow marijuana or distribute it or produce it or something like that. But there's just a lot of obstacles to that when you transition from the status of mega criminal, 40 prisons and jails. I mean, come on, that's not really that common. And a lot of people are nervous about guys with, and I've got controversial political opinions on everything, right? So I'm a bit of my own worst enemy there. because wives and employers often think that, you're dragging them into your business, right? Your political points of view. And one of the things about that businessmen all know is it's best never to be political. It's not good to offend anybody if you can avoid it, because hopefully you want as many customers from as wide a market demographic as you can get, right? That's why business people by nature are very pliable, very flexible. They have to be. They have to go with whatever flow is in the market: political flow, business flow, regulatory flow, employee flow, wife flow, banker flow. So those guys, they get to used to handling a lot of decision making with a certain degree of calmness, or you can't cope, or you can't survive.
I don't think that's your market, though. I think your market is in your people, honestly. Like your market, there's tons of people that have Joe time that can't convert like you can, right? That want the information on how to become successful post-prison. I'm one of these people that I did that. I speak on that, right? Because I got out of prison and I wrote a $7 million funnel for an oil and gas company, and wrote a book for a guy. And next thing I know, he's walking around with all the money, and I had to teach myself how I made him that money. So I had to re-engineer how that happened. And now I'm a brand strategist for a lot of the bigger brands out, because I'm able to see that vision. But people like us, people want to know, after I got out of prison, what do I do? Because 90% recidivism for anybody is bad anyway, right? And so you want to be able to have that knowledge, but you have the knowledge, plus you have the status. I mean, both those things put together, people pay cash money for this. Russell Brunson, the biggest salesman of the last year and the year before, because he's just created a sales process that's online. And duplicating these things is super simple. I'm self-taught. I taught myself funnels in 6 months and was doing $1 million funnel within 6 or 7 months. It took me 4 to write that damn book. I should have volunteered for that, but it was a good learning experience.
We look forward to the opportunity of discussing how we can turn cannabis into a business.
Yeah. Well, we're going to need to, because
halfway to prison.
As well, we're going to need to, because there's going to be millions and millions of people without employment who are going to need to segue quickly into something that has a fairly stable market, and that's always been cannabis. I'm not sure there'll be bloated police budgets anymore, because governments are going to be strapped for cash, let me tell you.
AI is going to handle all of the police for here in the future. When 5G gets fully implemented,
oh my God,
AI is going to handle
5G's not getting implemented. Those are coming down.
5G?
Yeah, they're coming down.
It's already up. The reason why
I know it's up. They're coming down. Oh, we can't continue to put out fires. Like, we have to go get the fireman, and the fireman is the 5G. Like, it's too late.
Let's not talk about 5G. You guys are crazy. Right?
I'm a little bit too far in the wormhole for like
most people. 5G around the world is just insane.
You know what's funny too, because all this COVID, everybody inside, I've discovered so many conspiracies that I was vaguely aware of but never took seriously. But Jesus, when I said I'll go get a vaccine, I got hundreds of people write me, no, you're supporting
crazy. Your Facebook is so funny. Like, cause I can't tell if you're ever serious or not. And so I'm reading your stuff. I'm serious. Like, I can't tell. I'm like, oh my God, this is hilarious.
I can't wait for lockdown to be over so I can go and get my flu shot.
Well, and in my case, a haircut. You're starting to look kind of like a wild man, right? And since I'm the only person that sees me, I'm convincing myself I'm falling to a slothful neglect, like my pants are probably hanging off and I'm not cleaning up, right? Because, you're going to go, what does it matter? Who can see, right? So, but I haven't been doing that, don't worry.
We can see you.
I'm holding it all for yeah.
We
so
see you,
that niche that you just got done describing.
Your haircut is overdue, Mark.
That's for sure. But you know what? I feel for those guys. When are we ever going to get back to somebody breathing over your shoulder while they cut your hair, or doing your nails, or all that sort of speaking moistly, as our prime minister said, all that stuff that requires getting close to people that we always took for granted. Right? Like, how are they going to make a living again? Because here's the thing, I don't fear them. I'd go get my hair cut now and take my chances, which is what we do every day of our lives. Every day we go outside and get in a vehicle, for fuck's sakes. We're taking our life into our own hands. There's crazy people everywhere on the road, right? And but we still do it. We still play crazy sports. We go skiing, and people still are allowed to own guns to kill themselves. We take a lot of chances, and there's pathogens and viruses by the hundreds out there that we interact with daily. Okay, so this is just not a human way of existence. I was going to say a human.
Moist become a dirty word.
Moist, yeah.
Well,
moist is naughty. It's way naughty.
I mean, and
a naughty word. When did
COVID,
moist become a naughty word?
This COVID has probably reduced sexual activity more than any other plague or virus we've ever had.
Doctor was saying that earlier.
And all that. People
yeah. Well, you know what happens in December? My friend Gary here that's on the platform with us today coined the phrase bubble boomer. Come December, the bubble boomer generation commence.
You better get that trademark.
Hey, gentlemen, I've got to go and help out in Cannabis Culture's 420 broadcast, but I've had an awesome time. Thanks to the New Zealand stuff was so wonderful. I want to let's all talk again. You could do this every day. This sounds like a really fun thing. Cross trans world checkup. Actually, it'd be kind of fun. All right, see y'all later.
Thank you, Mr.
Emery. Be doing more of this. Mark, it's a pleasure. Take care. Fantastic.
Man, that's cool.
I had a little snooze earlier, guys, and to be awake just in time to chat with Mark is a big thrill.
Freaking Marc Emery that's crazy. It's too good today. It's the best 420 ever, flat out.
Beautiful, fantastic.
It's great. I mean, Marc Emery, what?
Where's our next stop, guys?
Where's our next stop? 420 in about a little bit under an hour is going to be East Coast USA.
East Coast USA?
15 minutes. We arrive in the USA, do we?
Yeah.
Here we go. Now we start getting excited.
Awesome. So this is my time I can finally get a nap in. So this is great. I'm going to do that.
Right.
I thought you took
I will
a
see
nap
you guys.
earlier.
Huh?
I thought you took a nap earlier. The last time I was here.
There's no naps for me. This is my first nap time. I'm going to do a little yoga, about 5 minutes of yoga. Give me a Savasana. I'm just going to, you know what I mean? Yeah, I'm set.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, we're hanging out for Declan to get here, so off you go.
Hey, make sure if I'm not up by 4 Central Standard Time, somebody do something. Shit, y'all aren't anywhere. Fuck, I got this. Don't worry.
We'll send you a cell phone.
Yeah, no, we're good. We're good. So have you got somewhere in the US that we can actually say, well, this is the place?
Yeah.
Hello.
I'm going to give somebody the host, Josh.
Don't give it. Wait, don't give it to me. Give it to Gage.
Give it to Gage. Give it to Gage.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's not a hot potato, guys. It's just a host.
You might want to send it to Decta if it helps you do video or anything, because I've got nothing to do from here.
Well, Decta's internet's dog
Doesn't do anything for me.
Okay. I have to take off for just a second. My glasses broke and I've got the wrong ones here. I'll be back in about 2 minutes.
Cool.
So hold down the fort there, Decta. I'll be back in a minute.
We've got the fort. We've got the fort.
Gary's really the most qualified. He's the only one been riding all night.
He's impressive. Mr. Chiles is on point.
Yes, very much.
He didn't talk much though.
Short and sweet.
Sometimes I just have to wait for a gap.
He's
Quite often I just have to wait for a gap.
I think we're coming over towards America and the electronics seem to be getting better. Do you think that's possible? Getting closer to the source and other nonsense.
Who's coming? Who's Hempstorian? When is Hempstorian coming up? In 30 minutes?
Gone.
Did we lose? Oh, we lost it. I think Hempstorian's coming up here pretty soon.
Hempstorian?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I saw the Facebook page last night. Looks.
Okay.
Oh, wait. No, that's him. He can't take a nap. He's got to come on here and post.
Oh, no, he went to get his new glasses. Michael went to get his glasses.
I'm talking about Martell.
Oh, you know, I don't think he's taken a nap. He didn't take a nap when I was away for a nap.
Yeah.
So he was saying he hasn't had one yet, so he's way overdue. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
I think that was noticeable in the measure of his engagements. Look, he's back already.
Woo! That was a good nap.
Have you had your nap already? Is that called a speed nap in America? Is it? Hey, you go away for 32 seconds. Hey, here I am. I'm ready to go.
No, so I wanted to talk. I heard Josh mention the schedule, so I wanted to look at it and talk to him real quick before I went and lay down, because I don't think I'm up till 4. I made it, so. We had like 6,000 viewers earlier. Like when we're like every 10 minutes, it would be going back up to 6,000. When they had that panel on, it was crazy.
Wow. And it hadn't really got going yet. We've been going through all the quiet countries and the little places, like starting in New Zealand.
I've been halfway around the world.
Yeah.
Now
Well, Stanford just sent me something too. Italy.
Hello.
Oh.
Hello. Are you there? Hello? Anybody there? Hang on. I got to turn it on. Hang on. I'll get back to it. Okay? Hello? Are you there?
That's a phone call you won't get twice. So I'm very limited here. These glasses suck, man.
Oh, the glasses are
my other
looking good.
glasses just fell apart.
How'd you sleep?
Slept great.
Yeah.
Yeah, slept really good.
What's that like?
You need to find out.
I had dreams of Uzbekistan. And
yeah, I'm not up to 420.
Hunan.
So I got 2 videos here. I got Greta Gaines. I forgot all about that. So I got Greta Gaines.
That'd be a
I
good
got
one.
the rest of that Weedhead video. We got so much damn content. And then we still got Josh T. What's his name? I forgot it, but I still got his video too, and it's pretty good. But Greta did a really good song too.
That when you're thinking so difficultly in front of a camera, we can see the pain of the thought.
That's because I get a little bit of a boner.
You screw up your face going, I can't remember what we're doing.
Yeah, it's like you ever get an erection and get constipated at the same time?
That could be very dangerous.
Did you know if you piss, sneeze, and fart at the same time, you die?
It could start spontaneous combustion.
It did. So, sorry about that.
Not a good way to light the joint.
It was spontaneous, man. I got nothing to do with it.
Cheers.
Oh, cheers. 2:36. He's waking and baking.
So the East Coast of the United States, that's my turf. So you got the pretty widespread of states going from Florida all the way to Maine, Vermont, and New York City, and New York, and Virginia.
So, I got these videos. I don't know if you guys want me to play them or you guys just hold down airtime till 2:40, whatever.
It's up to you. Take a nap.
No, it's up to us. Martell's going to have a snooze.
I'm going to be asleep, so I'm going to give you the Casper. I hope nobody's wearing a wire when I get back. The DEA better not have the channel. I'll just pass down the torch.
Is there anybody in the waiting room to get in?
Not that I know of. That's why I need to pass the host for that reason. Okay, yeah.
Got to ask the right question. I like that background. Half brain, half weed.
Hey guys.
There she is.
Happy
Lennice Werth from the East Coast USA.
Hello.
Wow.
Introduce yourself there, Lennice. Say hi.
Yay. Hey,
Hello.
how's everything around? I've been watching around the world, man. This is really something, Casper. Way to go.
Isn't it cool?
Yeah, yeah. So so it's getting ready. We're getting closer to 420 here. We're ready. I'm telling you, Virginia's ready. We're on lockdown, of course. But there is, I'll tell you what, there are two schools of thought. There's one group of people who wants to just stay at home and wear masks and all that. And then there's another group of people who's pissed off about it. And they seem to be like, I don't know, trying to spread it or something. I was in one FedEx, I went to the FedEx counter and they were just almost like they were hugging and, oh, it was funny. So I just stay home. So I'm really happy to celebrate 420 this way with you all.
Yeah, it's nice.
Good.
Yeah,
that's what it's all about.
Talk about legalizing, and it makes me feel like what a strange trip, strange trip it's been, man.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say hi. I'm on my way to take a nap. They forced me to go to bed.
Okay. Have a good.
I just want to say hello.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I've been watching you.
I've been watching you too. You just didn't know it.
Oh no! Elf on the Shelf. Whoops.
Oh God. Bye.
So Lennice Werth, Virginians Against Drug Violence, Virginia activist of long regard. At one time, little sisters of the
Mother Herb. Little sisters
of the Mother Herb. Also, a Business Alliance for Cannabis Hemp of Virginia, one of the first Bach chapters, right?
Well, yeah. When you talk about Bach, it takes me back. You know, I was listening to Casper talk about Jack, and you know, back in the day. It was a strange time. It's just like it was said before, the 80s was a very strange time. I call them the dark days of the drug war, because everything, you know, it looked like in the 70s that something might happen, and then Jimmy Carter failed, just like, you know, we were saying earlier, and then the parents group and the anti-marijuana group cranked on up, and all of a sudden the war on drugs was just going full swing. People were getting slammed with horrible sentences, and I mean, it was just terrible. And I had been a member of NORML since 1972, and I was dissatisfied at the progress. Imagine that, you know. So I had to jump in and do something myself. So my girlfriend and I, we stood on my back porch one day and swore to get it legalized or die trying. And that's when we formed the Little Sisters of the Mother Herb. There was a sister organization on the West Coast called the Holy Hemp Sisters.
Okay.
Yeah.
It sounds like a lovely name for a nunnery.
Yeah, that was the joke. Well, I used to name my female plants after this nuns that I went to a Catholic college. So they were named real nuns in hopes that they would maintain their chastity, you know.
Well, our patron saint in New Zealand, for those of the Catholic faith, is Sister Mary O'Bear. And Sister Mary O'Bear was a Catholic nun who came to New Zealand in the 1800s and something, and she grew cannabis commercially. She was the first person to grow cannabis in New Zealand commercially. It was legal back then, of course, and she provided tinctures and balms and salves. Her cannabis was exported from New Zealand around the world.
Wow.
She's about to become New Zealand's first Catholic saint. It's gone through all the processes that Catholic Church does, and I'm not familiar with that, so I won't go there. But she's about to become the first Catholic saint from New Zealand. And for those of us that are in the cannabis culture, I think that's pretty cool.
That is.
That we're going to have our very own saint, albeit of a religious nature.
Well, yeah, that's a very difficult, you know, you have to really, you know, have miracles attributed to. Now, I'm not Catholic, actually. You go to a Catholic college. But
no, apparently, look, I'm not religious at all, but apparently the Catholics have ascribed certain miracles to her.
Oh, that's wonderful.
The best miracle of all would be, of course, the moment New Zealand legalizes and that the people who are part of the cannabis culture get to own the plant. Now that would be a miracle.
Well, and we'll
that would
ascribe
be
it,
worthy of us
ascribe
all
it to
being.
her. That's so cool. I love that. That's a great story. That has to go down in hemp history.
Well, it'll be pretty impressive when it happens.
Yeah.
Because there is a beautiful church in the area where she grew the cannabis that's in such an out of the way place, but it's a lovely old building, and there will be pilgrimages from around the world, is what was predicted. I don't know how much of that is going to occur now that we've had this COVID thingy. I think we're going to be staying in our own countries for some time to come. But each day is an interesting day. We live in interesting times, I think is a famous quote from way back, and I think we can all use it these days. We do live in interesting times. So
yeah, well, that's for sure. And you know, this has happened before, and we just didn't know about it. We weren't. We were more at the mercy of viruses like this. And I just hope that we find a solution to this really soon, because I don't like the I like being social, but I do look up at the sky and notice how blue the sky is, and the air is so clean. And so, I mean, there's maybe
it's amazing how quickly it happens.
For a while we have it.
Yep. Yep. The canals in Venice were cleared when all the tourist boats stopped running up and down. The mud settles, and you could see the fish again.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah.
Around the world, people are liking some of the things that are occurring. The cleaning up of the atmosphere happens really, really quickly.
Isn't that amazing?
And there's talk about how do we maintain some of these good things that have come out of this. Look, nothing really good is coming out of this COVID nonsense.
And that's how we get back to hemp, isn't it? Because hemp has a big role to play in that. I'll tell you from the back. Wait, we were talking about that. I was talking about Jack here, and back at toward the end of the 80s, that book came out, and it really did jumpstart the cannabis hemp movement, right? That book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes. Without that, I'm not sure what would have happened. But because of that book, people got a passion about cannabis and hemp. The whole issue, from nuts to soup, from commercial paper and rope and cloth, all the way into medical marijuana, and in between with, just enjoying it to relax. And it just was such a moment when that book was published and people started reading that book.
Yep. And the best thing about
how hemp could be used to make plastic that would biodegrade, which is actually happening now.
The best thing I've found since I've been in this campaign is that you can't unlearn things. When you learn how good cannabis is, when you learn what it can be used for, you can't unlearn those things. So that's why we've been making progress around the world. It's why America has been leading the way with the legalization state by state. It's happening much slower than all of us thought. More than 20 years I've been involved in this, but there are still people in the campaign that have been in it longer than I have. So
yeah, I was going to say just 20 years.
Yeah, that's right. I'm a newcomer. I stand on the shoulders.
I chose an impossible place to work, so it's. But I've tagged along with Mike on some of this international stuff, which he has been very effective at this. He's been crazy effective at his international activism, and it's just the world is a different place. And when I got started in this, well, like I say, I joined NORML in 1972, and then I campaigned for Jimmy Carter, because he said he was going to do something. And that was my activism at that moment, was to get Jimmy Carter elected. And then I got an invitation to the inauguration, and I stored that. It's in a closet somewhere, but then what happened with Carter happened, and that failed. And then the dark days of the drug war followed. and it was horrible. And then Jack Hare's book came out, and that was like a light. It was, to see that, I said, that's when I wrote, I went to the back of that book, Emperor Wears No Clothes, and I wrote 3 or 4 letters to different organizations that were put notices in the back of that book that you could get in touch with them to get active. And I wrote to Jack's group, was called Help End Marijuana Prohibition. Remember that? And then I wrote to Chris Conrad, Business Alliance for Commerce and Help. And the only one that did get back to me was Chris Conrad, I have to say. So I've been friends with Chris and Mickey for a really, really long time, and they're super duper activists. And I don't know where we would be without them. In fact, I really don't think the book would have been published if it hadn't been for Chris there editing it. And I think Chris probably needs a little bit more recognition for that, because in the way I understand it, Jack was brilliant, but not terribly focused, you know, and to get the book published took Chris's focus, which he is. So
I think there's probably a lot of us that could.
Yeah, there was probably a lot of people, and I wasn't out there at the time, but there were a lot of people involved in that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was an evolving project. The very first version of that book, most people have never seen. It was the OMI white papers. And it was, the title, working title was Things They Should Have Taught You in High School, ... The Emperor Wears No Clothes. And Jack and his buddy, actually, a couple buddies actually stood out in front of a high school in Southern Oregon and handed that white pages out, the first edition of the Emperor. They handed them out to high school students so that they'd get caught up on what they should have learned in school. I think that if you look at it from today's sensibilities, it's a very different approach than we would take today in spreading the word. I like it. Very direct.
Yeah, that's
what do we do today? We can't hand out brochures. We have to hand out iPads.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Nobody can read anything unless it's on an iPad.
Social media.
Come across some papers that a lot of them were from the government, you know, and this guy Dewey, where the, you know, had Mike, you know more about that. The guy who worked for the agriculture department, and there was a lot of government, U.S. government stuff on hemp that Jack had found. And then at that time that Jack was trying to verify that this was the real thing, he found that instead they were trying to deny it, but that it was indeed the real thing. He did a lot. He went to DC, he sat in government offices. He did a lot to verify that. And then of course he found that they were just trying to cover it up, but it was the real thing. They didn't have it on in their electronic storage, but when he went to the stacks and went and looked in the paper versions of things, that's where he found it. Am I right about that, Mike?
Absolutely. Not only that, but as I understand the story, the way the cards were being stored and the way that they were being transitioned, it wasn't going to be much longer that you were going to be able to find that card. He
did it just in the nick of time. That's just in the nick of time.
Yeah. And once he brought it to their attention, was able to take because there was a film strip, and then there was a poster and a flyer that was created by the U.S. Department of Agriculture for the war effort. There was a war company called the War Hemp Industries, and the War Hemp Industries' sole purpose was to bring in hemp for the war effort. They ramped up hemp hundreds of times what they had before. Right in the middle of marijuana prohibition in the 1940s during World War II, all of a sudden we had a huge hemp industry in the United States growing everywhere and being processed by United States government processing facilities. And their little film strip is just wonderful. If you've never seen it, Hemp for Victory. I'm sure you can just type that in YouTube.
Oh, Jack sold those copies of that by the bucket load. I'm telling you, I got that somewhere still on videotape. Hemp for Victory, and sold to me by Jack Hare.
I think the other thing that was truly important in the Emperor was the Scripps test. I hope I'm saying that right. But there was a test that was done on hemp right before World War I got into full motion. And it was really amazing. It broke down the hemp crop and how much you could sell it for and everything. I especially like the fact that it gave you a clean ratio of what the flowers and tops would be worth with, before prohibition, as a ratio of the whole plant. And I think that's where our future for hemp is, to grow hemp for fiber, for fuel, for seeds. And then you have a special mechanism that just culls off the tops and sticks them off to the side, and you get medicine at the same time. You get an agricultural crop, an industrial crop, and a medicine crop all at the same time through careful production. And I think that's what the Scripps test really showed was possible. They had a brand new machine, a hemp decorticator, and it was the wars, as I understand it. And now, adding the new layer of our new understanding of history, I never really knew much about 1918. It's right in the middle of this time period. It was only a few years after the Scripps test, right there in the World War I time period, that we had our first big flu, that Spanish flu, which just devastated communities, killed a lot of people. And I wonder how much that played into marijuana prohibition. It's kind of a missing detail in the whole story. You could tell the whole story of hemp, I think, from a lot of different perspectives. And Jack chose one, from the perspective of what it would have been like maybe in a world without industrialist, colonialist, superpower giants like DuPont and whatnot. But there was a lot of other strings that you could have pulled at that, in that time period. It was a fascinating time period, evidently.
Yeah, and I think that it was the it was so it had so much potential that it was a threat to the powers that be, and I think that's what went wrong for us. I think that's where the whole thing. I think the Mellons and the DuPonts and the Hearsts, and then the gun, I don't know who else was involved, but my guess is there were other entities. So
hey, Al and Mary Lynn joining us.
Hey.
Hello,
hey, hi.
More East Coasters.
Yeah. And 420.
Almost. Florida, USA will be coming up soon as we rotate the earth into place.
25 minutes.
We were just talking about the origins of our drug war, and Jack Harris, Emperor Wears No Clothes. And, I think that Jack had it right. Certainly there was a lot of big money at play. There was a lot of social engineering at play, but I want to be a little bit of a reality check for everybody and say that we were kind of screwy back then. The general public liked chemicals. We thought chemicals were great, better living through chemistry. We thought it was clean to produce something with chemicals and not have all that plant material around. We liked having a single molecule that we could dominate and control and put in a bottle rather than dealing with the complex arrangements of molecules in nature. We were stupid, to be short and blunt.
Mother Nature knows best.
Yeah, I tried arguing with
guys, but I think we're still that way.
Yeah. I think you're right.
So I don't want to put it all on Mellon and DuPont and those guys. They were evil, but they weren't evil extraordinaire. They were just regular evil.
Oh, they were evil, and what they were doing was for their to protect their fortunes, to protect their wealth. The people that do it today are uninformed buttholes. I'm trying to think of a polite word that we can say on your TV. I would use a much stronger word here. But the fact is that people know the truth, but we have this institutionalized system of controlling cannabis that it's very hard to jump up against it. And fortunately, you guys in America have been showing the way with state after state after state. Prohibition has ended. And then we have other countries. Canada is only legal because Marc and his crew made such an impression back in the day. So I think it's fantastic the way that things are going, but vested interests, we're up against those all the time. The vested interests, the people, when you follow the money, they keep telling you that, follow the money.
Well, here's a story.
Where's the money? The money's in private prisons. The money's in alcohol. Where do people, the
pharmaceuticals,
eh?
And the money's in pharmaceuticals. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't want cannabis out there. So everybody has their own particular axe to grind in order to keep it illegal. And we've fought against this for years. Fortunately, America has been able to change laws state by state because you have remarkable referendum laws that are binding on the politicians. Here's our referendum that we're promoting that's coming up in September in New Zealand, and it's not a binding referendum. That's if it even continues, because no one's out there campaigning. We're all locked down. Nobody's talking about cannabis being legal in our country. In fact, probably not anywhere else in the world right now, because nobody's talking about anything except viruses. So it's a difficult time for those that have yet to change laws, and for those that have changed, it's fantastic.
So let's say you get the referendum passed. What's your take? I mean, the police in the Netherlands, that's the reason why we were able to have the marijuana policy, was because they used their discrimination, positively for us. In the United States, it's gone the other way, where police have actually bucked the law to arrest people. Where do your police as a nation, sort of fit into that? Would they listen to that referendum? Would they follow it?
No, they will follow the law. And the reason why the police are continuing to come after us right now, when we're hoping and been planning to have an open and public debate about changing the law, I got picked off. I'm very public in this country. And I publicly asked for the police to give us some leeway to use their discretion. There's no law that requires them to prosecute everybody they come across. So we invited the police to come to our new club in Wellington, and they chose not to. They chose to, in fact, commence an undercover operation. A serious crime squad got involved. And next thing, they're rolling across the counter, so to speak. And we're under arrest, and it's serious crimes, and we end up with stupid evidence, where I'm now looking at evidence that the police are providing that target me, leaves premises, goes to shop, buys milk, returns to premises. Like absolute nonsense that we've got police officers, serious detective sergeants, that are sitting in their cars watching little old me running a little cannabis club where we've openly invited the police to come in, as long as they don't arrest us. But we all need to be part of this debate. And if we can't be part of the debate, then it's a one-sided debate. Look, I'm old enough to remember the worldwide debate about homosexual law reforms. For us in New Zealand, homosexual law reform happened in the 1980s. The police didn't go out and arrest gay people who were talking publicly about changing the laws. The police left those people alone. But they come after us because we're a soft target, and vested interests. Lay the complaint with the police feel obliged to come after us. And it's a nonsense. And it's a blot on society's head.
Misuse of resources.
Sorry to hear that. That's a real shame. The only way I've ever seen that really dealt with, and it takes a lot of time and effort, is just to directly talk to the police, and then also show up at political meetings where their funding is at stake. And just seeing you there will scare the bejesus out of them. So take it gentle on that.
That doesn't work.
They're state-funded police, not politically funded.
That's a shame. Oh wow. Well, I don't know. You've got to find a way to tackle that. Talking to the police, we have one guy who's really one of our wild and crazy kind of guys, but he has an affinity. He used to work for the Fraternal Order of Police. And he's made friends with the cops down at the state capitol, and they're softening up. Prosecutors, this is in Virginia, and we're just starting with reform here. We just decriminalized this year. Yeah. So it's not even the ink is still wet on the bill, and it hasn't been enacted yet. It doesn't get enacted, and I think it's July 1st. So,
Okay.
but it is real decrim, Marilyn and Al. We did get something, huh? Woohoo!
Oh yeah, we're hearing it. We're seeing it on the internet.
Well, you know, and what's great is the oil, you know, that comes in the little, you know, cartridges. That's included. They took away the little limit they had where they made it a felony if it was over 17%. So they did that too.
Hey, Doctor, I wrote an article maybe 25 years ago to respond to what you were saying. I said then, I believe it now, I think it's true in your country as well as mine, that the war on drugs / people is in essence another, it's a jobs program for cops. There is no other way to really see this thing. So when you're up against your law enforcement professionals, you know, you're what the Asians would say, you're screwing with my rice bowl, man.
I understand that.
You understand that, don't you?
I understand that too.
But Lennice and Marilyn and I were all in the Virginia fight together, as was Mike Krawitz. And what I learned in my world of traveling around our country, talking to law enforcement, as Lennice says, you got to talk to them face to face. And face to face, I'd say half of them, all the way up to the heads of our different state police and stuff, said, hey, we agree with you. We don't think that recreational cannabis, hemp, medical cannabis is a problem at all. So you need to address them, as Lynn says, that they're the true professionals that are not worried about their rice bowl, but are in the law enforcement business to take care of people, to help people. Those are the guys you want to talk to.
Sure.
You know, a funny story. Years back, I can't remember which state, I think it was Michigan, but we're talking, and there was an ex-DEA agent. So we've got the Drug Enforcement Administration, and they're the ones, you know, that'll go in and do the busts. And apparently this cop had been on many of the busts, and they go in and the grow operations. So they go in and they cut down all the plants and they take them away, and then they burn them someplace. They destroy this stuff. It finally dawned on him. He had a chronic back pain, and it seemed that later in the evening and the next day after those busts, he would always feel better. It's in, you know, nice warm weather. He's carrying all this stuff in his arms, and he's just absorbing some in his skin or something. And it took him, I don't know how many busts, but he said he finally got it, that it really is medicine. He was a former DEA member when I saw him. He left the department. But yeah, I mean, just they need convincing on some level to know that
DEA still, and this is purely policy at the DEA, and the individual members, I have no idea, but the DEA, they still stand firmly with, you know, Schedule 1 and everything, and it's because it's strictly a jobs program. Al is so correct about this. It's their bread and butter, marijuana arrests. There's not enough people who use the other drugs.
What the hell else would they do?
Well, and what an easy criminal to go after. You don't usually have to worry about.
You're not really a criminal.
Yeah.
You need all these pot smokers in the millions, right? Yeah. Or you wouldn't have anything to do every day. There's only something like, I don't know, I'm going to make it up, but I think it's something like 400,000 heroin users addicted to heroin in the entire United States. So, you know, you could chase them down real quick because they got thousands of DEA agents, but that's no fun. You gotta go after the other stuff. So anyway, it's a jobs program, and unfortunately, that jobs program has spread internationally. That this is now an international jobs program for a lot of people, including your law enforcement folks down there in the other side of the world.
But it is quite unique. I can't think of another job as simple as a police officer who wants to go out and catch a criminal. All they have to do is to walk down any street of any city and follow their nose. They don't have to investigate anything.
Right. In fact,
I smell a criminal.
Yeah. I mean, we've had people where they're going to some house for some complaint or checking something. They knock on the door, they smell something, everything changed. Instead of coming to see if you've been robbed, they're coming in and arresting you because they smell a drug. Yep. They smell cannabis. It's not a drug.
Couple of days ago, police pulled over a car in New Zealand. Some young guy on his way somewhere, just checking to see that they were able to be out on the road during a lockdown situation. And in the course of the conversation, the police officer smelt something from the car. And the guy got arrested. 10 pounds he had in the car. Clearly wasn't well secured and sealed, but nonetheless.
Rolled out the window and.
It's an easy bust, isn't it? An easy bust for the cops. Just use your nose.
Yeah, the legal.
Yeah, but you know, it's interesting. I'm sorry, Lennice, but in the United States, recently, there's been a lot of court rulings about the smell test. Is that what you were going to say, Lennice? Yeah.
I was going to talk about it, yeah.
The courts have said, no, you really can't. You may think you can, and the cops will swear they can, but the courts here in the United States have now said, no, that's not fair. There's a lot of things that smell like cannabis, and besides, it's just not going to happen. So you might want to look at our recent American laws and see if you can't get some interest in them from your folk. But apparently that is something, I'm sure it's still done all over the United States.
Oh, no, the smell test has been questioned. Like, I can remember more than 20 years ago when I was just starting to get involved in this campaign, the president of Normal in New Zealand was arrested at a random search late one night in the street. Somebody got lippy, the police wanted to have a look in his pockets. And they ended up tipping his pockets out and finding a little bud, and they used the sniff test. We could smell it. And when it went to court, and of course he defended the case, the police officer that was allegedly able to smell the weed, I actually had an ounce of cannabis in my pocket and sat beside her in the court while she was waiting to be called as a witness, because I was a backup. If he had lost the case, I would have actually gone on the stand and explained how I had this cannabis far more than this little bud that our president had. And it wasn't necessary. He won the case. The judge saw the light. A sniff test wasn't enough, and he walked free. But police still used the sniff test. And once you've been snapped and you've lost whatever it is that you've got, it's hard to say that it was an illegal search when the illegal search led to something that was illegal. So you get different opinions from police, from judges on these minor ones. But it's fun. A lot of it's just fun.
One of the things that happened in the United States, especially comes to mind in Washington State on the West Coast, there was legalization, and legalization wasn't for a heck of a lot of marijuana. There was a lot of fears, especially after Oregon. The police had actually used the database for the medical marijuana program nefariously at one point and got in trouble for that. We had to go to court and fix that. So there was a lot of unease about how the police would handle databases and information and tracking and license tags, and what they would do rounding. There was a big fear they would literally just round up marijuana users. But what happened was, with just a small amount of marijuana legal, it made the smell of marijuana no longer relevant. It was no longer the suspicion of a crime because the possession of marijuana was no longer illegal. So it's funny, the first joint is really all you need to legalize. After that, it could be a mountain of weed behind it, but it's the first joint you legalize, because once that's legal, they can't see the mountain because it's all legal. It's hiding behind that joint.
So it's really, the smell thing turns out to be a real kind of important detail. The change in the law that we've seen in Virginia has been done by court case. There hasn't been a law changing what the way smell the police can. What police can do when they say, I smell cannabis, they can still do that. And that was one of the ACLU made a big point of this during the last legislative session, that the current way that they've decriminalized it doesn't do enough to eliminate that. And they talked about the smell a lot, and a lot of new activists, young activists were coming in, and from the African American community and very diverse communities coming in and speaking, which, you know, as you guys who have been in this for a long time, that's a lot of that's new. And so that's what's changing, is our insistence of the smell thing is a real, you know, it's a little a device that the cops are using to get their toe in and get to those searches and what's in your pockets and all of that sort of stuff.
It's
but,
so sad, isn't it? It's
yeah,
so sad that.
But there have been a few cases that have been won in court about the odor, and one was a kind of a big one. But I know the lawyer who got that case, won that case, and boy, that's an expensive lawyer, but he's the best, but he's expensive. So I'll say that much.
Well, you know,
we all have our little victories against the forces. We have our victories from time to time. We had a victory a few years ago where the police came into our club in Auckland and without a warrant. And they took our vending machine. We had a cannabis vending machine where you could in and out would pop a bag of cannabis. And the police came in without a warrant and took it away. Well, we fought that in the courts, and the sergeant got on the stand and told a whole bunch of lies of how he came to be there. And he didn't know that we had a secret recording from security cameras. He thought he had taken them all with our security devices, and we tripped him up. He lied his head off, and then we proved it when we showed the video in the court, and we won that particular case. It was deemed to be an illegal search. So we took our bus, emblazoned with legalized cannabis down the side, and we went over to the police department and we picked up our vending machine and made a speech in front of the media. The media looked at the transcript from this particular case and declared him publicly to have been perjured. He was a perjurer. He had told lies.
Exactly.
And he got away with it.
Yeah.
So we're about to talk about that in my current trial because we cannot have the police continuing to tell lies in order to make a prosecution. That's unacceptable in any free democracy. So
they call it test-a-lying. The cops themselves call it test-a-lying.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Well, there's another way. In the U.S., we've had for many years the big problem of the drug dogs coming and smelling. So this was back a few years, but in 2012, I think it was, Al and I were driving from New Mexico to Arizona or whatever. And in the back of the truck, we just happened to have a whole bunch of canisters that the federal government had supplies our federal patients with the cannabis. As we said earlier, there's only 2 patients left in the United States. But anyway, we were getting these canisters to one of the earlier patients, now deceased. So it had remnants of cannabis in it, and we get stopped by the immigration police. And so you've got to stop, and they all surround the car, and they got their dog circling the vehicle. And I was driving, and he came up, and they're checking it pretty carefully. And, he's kind of looking around, and one of our dogs, we're traveling with 3 golden retrievers, and one of the dogs, comes up and he says, "Oh, you got a dog in there?" And I go, "Oh yeah, we've got 3. And one of them is in heat." And right away, he called off the dogs. He said, "Oh, never mind. They got a dog in heat here." Didn't know if it was alerting or not, but it was like, phew. We didn't have, She wasn't in heat, but it just served a good purpose at the time.
Get the hell out of it.
That is so much fun when you've got a dog that I got busted one time and they brought the dogs in and the dog was so excited. This dog came through where I was being held in the dining room. This dog came through on its way to the garage. And I swear this dog went past me, and if it could have talked, it would have said something like, "I'm so excited. I'm so excited. This is so much fun. I'm finding so much cannabis in this house. This is so much fun. That was what the dog looked like it was saying as it went past me on the way to the garage. And you know, they found nothing in the garage. And my friend and I, we got released the following day after we were granted bail. We came home and my friend went to the garage and he brought all these ounces of weed out of the garage. The dog had been totally confused and we'd just thrown them under some newspapers when they rolled in our driveway. And the dog missed it and they didn't search. So we actually came back from court and there was some missed cannabis. We were able to get down and have a serious session. It was really cool. We got a minute to go, people. Minute to go.
Minute or so.
Who's going to lead us into the first 420 in America? Who's going to do that?
You want to do the honors, Al, Marilyn?
It's 4:20 our time.
There you go.
It's actually 4:19 your time.
4:19, yeah, it's coming up. So that'll be, my goodness, what do we got? We got Maine and Vermont and New Hampshire and New York and Pennsylvania and Washington, D.C. and Maryland and Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida. Where am I missing?
There you go.
Alabama.
All of the East Coast.
Well, let us not forget the territory.
Canada, up in Canada. Down in, let's see, are we done?
Okay, 30 seconds.
Yeah, we need to remember that the American territories, St. Thomas, St. Croix, et cetera, all have passed
are they Eastern?
Positive cannabis laws.
Are they Eastern time?
Yeah, they're Eastern time. Sure. Yeah. And then our friends in the middle of the. All right, you ready? Light it up.
All right, here we go. 5 seconds. Countdown. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Woo!
20.
20. Oh man, yeah, I have to.
Okay, he is eating